Hello everyone, welcome to Module 4. This module explores the experience of immigrants. Immigrants can experience oppression in multiple ways. I want to go over the various terms listed on this slide. Xenophobia refers to prejudice against people from other countries. Nativism is a related term to xenophobia. It is the belief that the U.S. should be for Americans and not immigrants. Ethnocentrism is using your own culture as a standard with which to judge other cultures, with one's own culture being seen as superior. This is an example of hierarchical thinking. Linguicism is prejudice against languages other than the dominant one in society. Colorism is prejudice against those with dark skin tone. With crimmigration, if a non-citizen is charged with a crime, then their immigration status can be in jeopardy. We have seen this on the news recently. Othering is bias against those perceived as different. Many of these terms apply to people from different groups, even if they're not immigrants. Something that immigrants can experience is survivor's guilt. And that's guilt for those left behind, the family and friends that they left behind. Even if life is challenging as an immigrant, there can be opportunities they're given that they would not have back in their home countries. And so they realize that they have these opportunities and those they left behind don't, and that's part of this survivor's guilt. And of course, these are all different terms that represent the challenges, the oppression that immigrants experience in this country. And when we're thinking about the immigrant experience, we need to also think about intersectionality with other areas like gender, sexual orientation, religion. And so there can be, we should see how the immigrant experience intersects with sexism, heterosexism, religious oppression, ableism, ageism, classism. There are all sorts of ways that society oppresses individuals. Okay. So now I'd like to discuss the process of acculturation that immigrants undergo. What you see on this slide are two questions. The desire for maintaining their cultural identity and the immigrants' desire for relationships with others in this country. And so each of these questions yields two possibilities. So again, on the top part is asking if the immigrant has a desire to maintain or hold on to their cultural identity from back home. And on the left side is the other question: does the immigrant want to interact with and have a relationship with others from the new country? Their answers yield four possibilities. If the answer is yes to both, then we have integration, where the immigrant incorporates both cultures into their identity and behaviors. And this strategy has been found to have the best outcome for adolescents. Assimilation occurs when an immigrant gives up the native culture and adopts the new cultural ways. The history of the melting pot in the U.S. was all about encouraging immigrants to assimilate, which increased their chances of getting citizenship. I look forward to reading your thoughts about this when you submit your House We Live In paper towards the end of the course. Separation occurs when an immigrant has no desire to adopt the new culture and chooses to keep the native culture, their home culture. Marginalization is an acculturation state when an immigrant desires to form relationships with members of the new country and doesn't value the culture of their home country, but the immigrant experiences rejection from others in this new place and ends up feeling marginalized, feeling like they don't belong in any group. This is not a good place to be in, and we should help those individuals find support and a sense of community. Just like adolescents often experience a turbulent time during their teens as they try to understand the multiple facets of their identities, immigrants might also experience changes in their sense of identity. Immigrants often experience profound loss, the loss of their country, their families, their friends, and also their sense of self. The bigger the difference in countries, the more that is given up. Was immigration temporary or permanent? Was it planned or sudden? Can there be a visit back home? Why did the immigrant leave their home country? These are all important questions. It's important to note that children and youth don't typically choose to immigrate, and this can impact their adjustment to the profound changes they experience. But we need to remember that there is also an opportunity for growth for children, adolescents, and adults. Now let's look at the case of Kung Sa, an 8-year-old Korean immigrant girl who was referred by the teacher for counseling. The teacher reported that Kung Sa was extremely shy and withdrawn, and that her underachievement in school concerned her parents greatly. Kung Sa and her parents immigrated to the United States 2 years ago from Seoul, Korea. Despite having limited difficulty with the English language, Kung Sa did not interact with the rest of the class. Occasionally, the teacher found Kung Sa daydreaming, and she gradually fell behind in her classwork. When Kung Sa was introduced to the counseling room filled with a variety of toys, her spirits lifted. The school psychologist encouraged her to play freely with the toys she liked. Kung Sa spent a great deal of time during the first session exploring different toys. Her conversation with the school psychologist was limited to identifying the utilities of different toys. At the beginning of the second session, Kung Sa immediately picked up several light-haired dolls and one dark-haired doll. The light-haired dolls joined a circle and would not allow the dark-haired doll to be part of that circle. Once in a while, one light-haired doll would physically knock down the dark-haired doll. After such play actions were repeated several times, Kung Sa changed her play by placing 2 adult dolls in a house and asked the school psychologist would roll an object and demolish the house. Sensing the school psychologist's hesitancy, Kung Sa abruptly said, "Never mind, I do it myself." What do you think that Kung Sa's play symbolizes? What do you think about there being light-haired dolls joining a circle and leaving out the dark-haired doll? Do you think that these play scenarios are representing her experiences at school? I have spent many years, over 22 years, working with children in counseling, using toys as the vehicle for self-expression. Children typically don't have a lot of control in their lives, but they can recreate reality in their play and also a different type of reality. They can change things out to what they might want in their play. And so Kung Sa was likely showing what she's experiencing at school, likely being treated as different, as an outsider, perhaps even bullied, right? And she showed that she was what she was experiencing when she made the light-haired doll knock down the dark-haired doll. Now, what about the house being demolished? That was something different, right? Who do you think the adult dolls represent? Do you think that it can be her parents? They did bring her to the US and essentially put her in the situation, right? The thing about play and counseling is that children are really too young to engage in talk therapy, and so we help children through play. And in this early session, it might be too soon to ask Kungsa if she's experiencing what the doll figures are showing in her play. But that is something to work toward. It's important to give her a safe and brave space to act out her feelings and thoughts and perhaps voice them to the school psychologist when she's ready. In this module's journal reflection, you'll write about your migration story and experience with colorism. You will also reflect on your experience with code switching. If you're bilingual, are you aware of yourself code switching? That is, switching between your languages in mid-conversation? If you do, in what context and with whom do you code switch? And why do you switch languages? My mom used to code switch a lot, and she wasn't always aware of it. When someone was present that only spoke English, and whenever she would switch to Spanish, we would prompt her to say, speak English, and she always insisted that she was speaking English, but she wasn't. Code switching is a very normal process, and bilinguals typically switch because of the emotional content. It just makes more sense to say certain things in a given language. If you aren't from a family where English isn't a first language, so if you're not a bilingual person, perhaps you know other people who are. Think of someone you may be close to who is bilingual or who is from a bilingual family. Have you ever noticed them alternating between languages or perhaps dialects? Maybe in one conversation or even mid-sentence? What might be the motivator for the switching? What thoughts and feelings do you have when people speak a language you do not know in your presence? As always, have fun with the journaling, and I look forward to reading your responses.